The Grand Meridian Hotel in Miami, Florida, stood like a gleaming monument to wealth, its glass facade catching the golden hues of a late summer sunset, casting reflections that danced across the waterfront. Inside the Coral Ballroom buzzed with the energy of the city's elite. 300 of Miami's most powerful figures gathered for the annual Langston Charity Gala, an event less about giving back and more about showcasing the unchallenged dominion of its host, Edward Langston. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine perfume Cuban cigars and the faint tang of champagne that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a month. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, their light fracturing into 1,000 tiny rainbows across tailored tuxedos and silk gowns. The orchestra played a lively rumba, its rhythm pulsing through the room, urging the guests to sway, though most were too busy networking their smiles as polished as the marble floor beneath their feet. Edward Langston, a man whose fortune was built on real estate and ruthlessness, stood at the center of it all, his sharp gray suit, as immaculate as his reputation, was formidable. At 52, his hair was a silver crown, his eyes a cold, calculating blue that scanned the room not for friends, but for opportunities. To him, people were pieces on a chessboard, pawns to be moved, knights to be leveraged, queens to be courted. Tonight, he was the king, and the Coral Ballroom was his kingdom. Every nod and handshake a testament to his power. He sipped his scotch, savoring the burn, and let his gaze drift over the crowd, mentally tallying the net worth of each guest, their influence, their usefulness. This was his night to shine, to remind Miami that Edward Langston was untouchable. In the shadows of a service corridor just off the ballroom, another world existed, one that smelled of industrial cleaner and quiet exhaustion. Anna Carter, a 40-year-old housekeeper who had worked at the Grand Meridian for 7 years, moved with the practiced invisibility of someone who knew her survival depended on going unnoticed. Her hands, rough from years of scrubbing floors and polishing silver, trembled slightly as she balanced a tray of empty champagne flutes, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun that did nothing to hide the lines of fatigue etched into her face. Anna's life was a delicate balancing act. Every shift was a step on a tightrope, one misstep away from disaster. She was a single mother, widowed 3 years ago, when her husband Michael succumbed to a sudden heart condition that drained their savings and left her buried under a mountain of medical debt. The bills were a relentless predator, growing larger with each passing month, forcing her to take extra shifts to work, until her body ached and her spirit frayed. Her only goal tonight was to get through the gala, without drawing attention, to avoid the sharp tongues and sharper tempers of the guests who saw her as little more than furniture. Hidden in a nearby utility closet, her 11-year-old daughter, Lily Carter, sat cross-legged on a folded towel, her small frame tucked between stacks of cleaning supplies. Lily was supposed to be with a neighbor, but a last-minute emergency had left Anna with no choice but to bring her to work. "Stay quiet, stay hidden," Anna had whispered, handing Lily a dog-eared copy of A Wrinkle in Time and a granola bar. Lily's hazel eyes, bright with a quiet intensity, followed her mother's retreating figure as the closet door clicked shut. She wasn't reading, though. Instead, she listened to the muffled pulse of the orchestra, her fingers tapping out the rhythm on her knee, her worn sneakers scuffing softly against the concrete floor. In her mind, she was out there, not as a guest but as a dancer, spinning under the chandeliers, her simple cotton dress transformed into a flowing costume of crimson and gold. It was a dream she rarely spoke of, one born from the stories and steps taught to her by her grandmother, Rosa Carter, a legendary street performer in Miami's Little Havana, who had once set crowds alight with her salsa and merengue. Rosa had called it dancing with your soul, a way to tell stories through movement, to speak without words. But Rosa was gone now, taken by illness 2 years ago, and with her went the dance lessons, the music, the spark that had once filled their tiny apartment with life. Anna slipped back into the closet for a moment, her face pale with the strain of the night. "Just a few more hours, sweetheart," she whispered, handing Lily a bottle of water. "You okay?" Lily nodded, forcing a smile. "Fine, Mom. I can hear the music." Anna's heart clenched at the words. Music had once been their refuge. Michael strumming his guitar in the living room, Rosa teaching Lily to sway to the beat of a conga drum. Lily had been dancing since she could walk, her movements fluid and fearless, as if the rhythm lived in her bones. Rosa had seen it first, calling her "Mi pequeña chispa," my little spark. "You move like the ocean, mija," she'd say, her voice warm with pride. "Every step tells a story. Make it true." But the lessons had stopped after Rosa's death, the cost of classes too steep, the risk of injury too great. An injury, even a minor one, could mean medical bills they couldn't afford, another weight on Anna's already breaking shoulders. Anna touched Lily's cheek, then hurried back to the ballroom. Her steps heavy with the knowledge that she was failing her daughter, that the light in Lily's eyes was dimming under the shadow of their struggles. The ballroom was a glittering sea of privilege, the guests oblivious to the army of workers who kept it pristine. Anna wove through the crowd, clearing glasses, refilling ice buckets, her presence as unremarkable as the air they breathed. But the night took a sharp turn when a young waiter, new and nervous, tripped near the center of the room. His tray of mojitos went flying, a cascade of lime and mint splashing across Edward Langston's pristine white shirt. The music screeched to a halt, the lively rumba replaced by a stunned silence. Langston's face twisted into a mask of fury, the stain spreading like blood across his chest. "You idiot!" he roared, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. The waiter, barely 20, stammered apologies, his face ashen. "Get him out!" Langston barked, and 2 security guards materialized, escorting the trembling young man away. The event manager, a wiry man named Paul Reynolds, rushed forward with a napkin, his voice trembling. "Mr. Langston, my deepest apologies." A terrible mistake. Langston snatched the napkin, dabbing uselessly at the stain. "Mistake?" he spat. "This is what happens when you let amateurs into my world. Incompetence is contagious." His eyes scanned the room, seeking a new target for his rage, and landed on Anna, frozen mid-step with her tray of glasses. "You?" he snapped, pointing a manicured finger. "Cleaner. Come here." Anna's heart stopped. She stepped forward, her legs leaden, her eyes fixed on the floor to avoid the sea of curious faces. The crowd parted their murmurs, a low hum of anticipation. Langston gestured to his ruined shirt, his voice dripping with disdain. This is a $7,000 shirt. Do you have any idea how many toilets you'd have to scrub to afford this?" Anna said nothing, her throat tight with shame. The weight of 300 pairs of eyes pressed down on her, their amusement a palpable force. "Answer me," Langston demanded, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. I don't know, sir," she whispered, barely audible. Langston laughed, a cold, theatrical sound that drew chuckles from parts of the crowd. "Of course you don't. People like you don't think in those terms. You just shuffle through life dragging your mop, no ambition, no grace." He began to circle her, a predator, toying with its prey, enjoying the spectacle. "Look at you all, hunched over, no presence. I bet you couldn't even cross this floor without tripping over your own feet." The laughter grew louder, more confident, as the guests sensed a game unfolding. From the utility closet, Lily peeked out, her small hands clenched into fists, her hazel eyes burning with a mix of fear and fury. She saw her mother, the woman who worked until her hands bled, who sang to her even when her voice shook with exhaustion, being reduced to a prop for Langston's entertainment. Her heart pounded a drumbeat of anger and love. Langston's eyes gleamed with a cruel inspiration. "Let's have some fun," he announced, turning to the orchestra conductor. "Play a salsa, something vibrant, something with fire." The conductor, a slight man with a nervous smile, hesitated, but Langston's glare sent him scrambling. The first notes of a classic salsa tune, Quítate tú, filled the room, its rhythm infectious but menacing in this context. Langston turned back to Anna, his smile widening. "Here's the deal, cleaner. You're going to dance right now in front of everyone." The crowd gasped, some laughing outright, others shifting uncomfortably. This was no longer a jest. It was a public shaming, a deliberate cruelty. Anna's face drained of color. "Sir, please." "I can't?" she stammered. "Oh, I think you can," Langston said smoothly. "And to make it interesting, let's make a wager. For charity, of course." He raised his voice, addressing the room. "If you can dance this salsa with more passion, more skill than my fiancé, I'll donate $150 million to the charity of your choice." A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. The sum was obscene, a number so large it turned the challenge into a mockery, a promise he knew he'd never have to keep. His fiancée, Vanessa Sterling, a former competitive salsa dancer with a trophy case to prove it, glided to his side, her emerald gown shimmering. "Edward, darling, what are you doing?" she purred, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Just a little lesson in class," he replied, his voice dripping with condescension. He turned back to Anna. "But if you fail, and you will, you'll get on your knees and polish every guest's shoes with that rag you call an apron. Right here tonight." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Anna's hands shook the tray, rattling softly. Tears welled in her eyes, silent and unstoppable, as the reality of her predicament hit her. She was trapped, dance and face humiliation, or refuse and lose her job, her only lifeline. The music swirled around her, a cruel taunt, as the crowd watched, some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. Vanessa began to warm up her movements, sleek, and practiced a preview of the impossible standard Anna could never meet. From the closet, Lily's breath hitched. She saw her mother breaking, her strong, quiet mother, who had carried their family through grief and debt, now crumbling under Langston's cruelty. Something snapped inside her, a spark igniting into a flame. She pushed open the closet door and stepped into the light, her small frame dwarfed by the grandeur of the ballroom. "She won't dance," Lily said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. Every head turned. The orchestra faltered, the salsa rhythm stumbling into silence. Lily walked forward, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the marble until she stood between her mother and Langston. "She won't dance," she repeated, her hazel eyes locked on the billionaire. "But I will." The silence was deafening, a collective intake of breath from 300 of Miami's elite. Edward Langston stared at the 11-year-old girl, his mouth twitching as if unsure whether to laugh or scowl. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. Anna grabbed Lily's shoulders, her voice a desperate whisper. "Lily, no, sweetheart. Let's go." But Lily stood firm. Her chin lifted, her gaze unwavering. "No, Mom. He made you cry. Grandma said a real dancer doesn't let bullies win." The mention of her grandmother Rosa sent a jolt through Anna. She saw the echo of Rosa's fire in Lily's stance, the same unyielding spirit that had once captivated crowds in the streets. Langston recovered, letting out a sharp, barking laugh. "Well, what do we have here? A little street rat thinks she can dance." The crowd tittered, some nervously, others eagerly. He crouched down, his face inches from Lily's. "What's your name?" "Kid Lily Carter," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Lily Carter," he repeated, savoring the name like a cheap shot of whiskey. "And you think you can compete with Vanessa?" A child in thrift store shoes, Lily didn't flinch. "Grandma taught me. She said dancing is telling the truth. I'm going to tell mine." Langston stood, his laughter booming now, a performance for his audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new challenger, little Lily. Carter thinks she can dance for her mother's honor, and $150 million," he gestured to Vanessa, who was stretching elegantly, her confidence unshakable. "Vanessa will go first to set the standard. Then our little guest can try if she dares." He turned to Lily, his eyes glinting with malice. "But if you fail, your mother pays the price. She'll polish every shoe in this room, and you'll watch." The crowd gasped, the cruelty now so blatant, it silenced even the most callous guests. Anna's face went white, her voice breaking. "No, Lily, please." But Lily turned to her mother, her expression calm, resolute. "I can do this, Mom. For you, for Grandma." She stepped onto the dance floor, her small frame alone under the chandeliers. The conductor looked at her, his eyes kind but uncertain. "What song?" "Little one." Lily scanned the orchestra, then said, "Do you know Oye Como Va?" A murmur ran through the crowd. It was a salsa classic, a song of fire and rhythm made famous by Santana, a nod to Miami's vibrant Latin soul. Langston smirked, thinking the choice too ambitious for a child. "Play it," he ordered. The orchestra began, the congas and trumpets filling the room with a pulsing beat. Vanessa stepped forward, her movements sharp and flawless, a display of technical perfection honed by years of training. The crowd applauded politely, but their eyes were already drifting to the small girl waiting her turn. Lily closed her eyes, her hands loose at her sides, her body still as if listening to a voice only she could hear. In her mind, she was back in her grandmother's tiny backyard, Rosa's laughter ringing out as she taught her the steps of salsa, the sway of hips, the snap of feet. "Dance with your heart, mi pequeña chispa," Rosa had said. "Let the world see who you are." As Vanessa's performance ended with a dramatic spin, the crowd clapped, but the energy was shifting, the anticipation building. Langston clapped loudly, his voice smug. "That's the standard, kid. Let's see your little act." Lily opened her eyes, her gaze fixed not on the crowd, but on her mother, standing trembling at the edge of the floor. The music started again, the rhythm of Oye Como Va filling the air. Lily moved her first step, a deliberate stumble, a fall to one knee, that mirrored her mother's humiliation moments before. The crowd gasped, thinking it a mistake. But then she rose, her movements slow at first, then building her small body, weaving a story of struggle and defiance. Her arms sliced through the air, her feet stamping in time with the congas, each step a declaration of resilience. It wasn't just salsa. It was Rosa's salsa, raw and soulful, a dance of the streets, of survival, of love. The orchestra leaned into her rhythm, the trumpets soaring, as Lily spun her simple dress, flaring her face alight with a fierce, unbroken spirit. The room was hers now, and Edward Langston's jaw dropped as he realized he had underestimated the power of a little girl's truth. The choral ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel in Miami was still vibrating with the aftershocks of Lily Carter's performance, the air electric with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The 300 guests, Miami's glittering elite, stood frozen, their applause swelling into a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the chandeliers above. Lily, an 11-year-old girl in a faded cotton dress, had just danced a salsa so raw, so soul-stirring that it transformed Edward Langston's cruel wager into a moment of triumph. Her movements, born from the teachings of her grandmother Rosa, A street performer who once lit up Little Havana had woven a story of defiance and love that left the room spellbound. The orchestra, caught in the spell of her rhythm, had followed her lead, their rendition of Oye Como Va soaring to a crescendo that matched her final breathtaking spin. Now, as Lily stood in the center of the marble floor, her chest heaving, her hazel eyes bright with a quiet fire, the crowd was on its feet clapping, not just for her skill, but for her courage, for the way she'd turned a billionaire's malice into a moment of transcendent beauty. Anna Carter. Her mother stood at the edge of the dance floor, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of shame as they had been moments before, but of a fierce, overwhelming pride. Her daughter, her little spark, had stood up to a giant and won. But Edward Langston, the man who had orchestrated this public humiliation, was far from defeated. His face, once smug and commanding, was now a mask of barely contained rage. His blue eyes narrowing as he realized the room was no longer his. The applause went on a tidal wave of sound that drowned out Langston's attempts to regain control. He clapped his hands sharply, his voice cutting through the din. "Enough," he bellowed, but the crowd barely faltered their admiration for Lily, too strong to be silenced. He stepped forward, his stained white shirt a stark contrast to his polished demeanor, and raised his hands for silence. Slowly, reluctantly, the applause died down, replaced by a tense, expectant hush. "This is absurd," Langston said, his voice tight with fury. The wager was clear. The challenge was to dance a salsa with more passion and skill than Vanessa. That he pointed at Lily, his finger trembling, was not a salsa. It was a child's tantrum flailing around to a song she doesn't even understand. The crowd murmured, some in shock at his venom, others in discomfort. Vanessa Sterling, his fiancée, stood beside him, her emerald gown catching the light, her face a carefully neutral mask. She had danced with technical perfection, her steps a showcase of years of competitive training, but it was hollow compared to Lily's raw emotional performance. Langston's words were an attempt to rewrite the narrative, to claw back the power he felt slipping away. "The wager is off," he declared. The girl failed. And as for the consequences, he turned to Anna, his smile cold and cruel. "You know what you have to do, cleaner. Get on your knees. Start polishing." A collective gasp swept through the room. The cruelty was so blatant, so unrestrained, that it turned even the most jaded guests against him. Anna's face went white, her hands clutching the tray of glasses so tightly her knuckles blanched. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Lily stepped forward, placing herself between her mother and Langston, her small frame radiating defiance. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady, despite the pounding of her heart. "I danced the truth. That's what Grandma taught me. You said passion and skill. I gave you both." The room erupted in murmurs, some guests nodding, others whispering to their neighbors. Langston's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a new voice cut through the tension, sharp and authoritative. "That's enough, Edward." The crowd parted as Clara Martinez, a 60-year-old real estate magnate and one of Miami's most respected philanthropists, stepped forward. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her deep red dress commanding attention without effort. Clara had been a friend of Rosa Carter, Lily's grandmother, back when they were both young women navigating the vibrant chaos of Miami's street performance scene. She had watched Lily's dance with a growing sense of recognition, seeing Rosa's fire in the girl's every step. Clara's dark eyes locked onto Langston, her presence as unyielding as steel. "You've gone too far," she said, her voice low but resonant, carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "This child just showed more grace and courage than anyone in this room, including you. She danced for her mother, for her family, for a truth you wouldn't recognize, if it slapped you in the face." The crowd stirred, a few guests clapping softly, emboldened by Clara's stand. Langston's face reddened, but Clara wasn't finished. "You made a wager, Edward. You said $150 million for charity if she outperformed Vanessa." "Well, she did. And I'll start the donations right now. $20 million from the Martinez Foundation to whatever cause this young lady chooses." The room exploded again, this time with gasps and scattered applause. Another voice rang out, a tech mogul in a sleek black suit. "I'm in for $10 million. Then a hotel heiress, $5 million from me." The pledges came fast, a cascade of numbers that soared past $50 million on to the billions, then $100 million, then $150 million in minutes. It was a rebellion, a collective rejection of Langston's cruelty, his guests turning his own game against him. Anna, still trembling, looked at Lily, her eyes wide with disbelief. Lily squeezed her mother's hand, her expression calm but resolute. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." Langston stood frozen, his world unraveling. His guests, the people he'd spent years cultivating, were now siding with a housekeeper's daughter, their checkbooks and phones out, making good on their pledges. Vanessa touched his arm, her voice a low hiss. "You've made us look like fools, Edward. Fix this." But there was no fixing it. The room had shifted, the power no longer his. Clara Martinez turned to Anna and Lily, her expression softening. "You're Rosa's granddaughter, aren't you?" she asked. Lily nodded, her eyes bright. "She taught me everything." Clara smiled, a rare warmth in her stern features. "I knew Rosa when we were girls. She danced like the world was watching, even when it was just the street corner. You've got her spirit, child." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "This girl has honored her family and this city tonight. Let's honor her back." The applause returned louder now, a roar of genuine admiration. Anna sobbed openly, pulling Lily into a fierce hug, her heart swelling with a love so profound it felt like it could burst. But the victory was not without its shadows. As the crowd continued to pledge, Langston slipped to the edge of the ballroom, his face a storm cloud. He beckoned to his personal assistant, a sharp-eyed man named Victor Crane, who had been watching the scene unfold with a calculating gaze. "This isn't over," Langston muttered, his voice low and venomous. "Get me someone who can spin this. I want that family buried in the press by morning." Victor nodded, already pulling out his phone to contact a crisis PR firm known for its ruthless tactics. Langston wasn't just humiliated, he was wounded, and a wounded king was dangerous. He would not let a child and her mother dismantle his empire without a fight. Meanwhile, Clara Martinez was making arrangements of her own. She approached James Torres, the hotel's head of security, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, who had known Rosa Carter in her performing days. James had been stationed near the service corridor, his eyes never leaving Lily during her dance. He had seen Rosa's fire in her, and it stirred memories of nights spent watching street performers under Miami's neon lights. James, Clara said quietly, "We need to get them out of here. The press will be swarming soon, and Langston's not going to take this lying down." James nodded, his jaw tight. "I'm on it. I'll take them through the service exit." James approached Anna and Lily, who were now surrounded by a small group of well-wishers, women in diamond necklaces offering kind words, men in tuxedos shaking their heads at Langston's behavior. Mrs. Carter James said, his voice low but firm, "We need to move. The car's waiting downstairs." Anna looked at him, her eyes still wet with tears. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, her voice trembling. James glanced at Lily, who was standing quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. "I knew your mother-in-law, Rosa. She danced at my sister's quinceañera years ago, never saw anything like it. Your girl's got the same fire." He crouched down to Lily's level, his stern face softening. "You did good tonight, kid." Rosa would have been proud. Lily smiled a small, genuine smile that lit up her face. "Thank you, Mr. Torres." James straightened his hand, resting lightly on Anna's shoulder. "Let's go. You don't want to be here when the vultures arrive." As they moved toward the service corridor, the crowd parted their applause, following like a wave. Clara stayed behind her eyes, scanning the room for Langston. She spotted him near the bar, his phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. She knew that look. Edward Langston was a man who thrived on control, and tonight he had lost it. Clara pulled out her own phone and sent a quick message to a friend at the Miami Herald, attaching a video she'd discreetly recorded of the entire scene: Langston's cruelty, Lily's dance, the crowd's rebellion. "This needs to be seen," she wrote. "Make it fast." By the time Anna and Lily reached the basement parking garage, the video was already uploaded to a private server, ready to be shared with the world. James opened the door of a sleek black SUV courtesy of Clara's foundation and helped them inside. Anna held Lily's hand tightly, her thumb tracing circles on her daughter's palm. The silence in the car was heavy, not with fear, but with the weight of what had just happened. "You were so brave," Anna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know you could dance like that." Lily looked up at her, her eyes heavy with the exhaustion of the night. "I just wanted to make you proud, Mom, like Grandma made us proud." As the SUV pulled away from the Grand Meridian, the first news vans were already arriving, their cameras flashing in the Miami night. By midnight, the video of Lily's dance was trending online, shared across platforms with hashtags like #MiamiSpark and #SalsaGirl. The comments poured in, thousands of strangers calling her a hero, a prodigy, a symbol of hope. But not all the attention was kind. Victor Crane, acting on Langston's orders, had already contacted a shady PR operative known for crafting smear campaigns. By morning, anonymous accounts were posting rumors, claims that Anna had coached Lily to manipulate the crowd, that the Carters were con artists, looking to exploit the gala for personal gain. The seeds of doubt were planted, and Langston was determined to make them grow. Back at their tiny apartment in Overtown, Anna and Lily sat on their worn couch, the television off, the world outside buzzing with their story. Anna looked at her daughter, who was already half asleep, her head resting on her mother's shoulder. "What did we do tonight, Lily?" she asked softly. Lily's eyes fluttered open, her voice a whisper. "We told the truth, Mom, just like Grandma said." Anna kissed her forehead, her heart aching with love and fear. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. Langston's wrath was a storm on the horizon, and Anna knew it would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. For now, though, they had each other, and that was enough. The morning after Lily Carter's astonishing performance at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the world outside Anna and Lily's small Overtown apartment felt like it had tilted on its axis. The video of Lily's salsa, a raw and soulful defiance of Edward Langston's cruelty, had exploded across the internet, racking up millions of views by dawn. News vans lined the cracked streets of their neighborhood, their satellite dishes jutting into the Miami sky like invaders from another planet. Reporters knocked on their door, their voices a persistent hum through the thin walls, while bouquets of flowers from strangers piled up in the hallway, their sweet scent mingling with the stale air of the building. Anna Carter, still reeling from the events of the gala, stood at the kitchen counter, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of instant coffee. The stack of medical bills on the table, once a towering monster, now seemed like a relic of another life. The pledges from the gala had surpassed $180 million, funneled into a new charity, the Carter Spark Foundation, set up overnight by Clara Martinez's team to aid families crushed by medical debt and fund arts programs for children. Anna had quit her job at the hotel, her resignation letter, a single dignified line delivered to a stunned Paul Reynolds. For the first time in years, she could breathe without the weight of debt pressing on her chest. But freedom came with a new kind of pressure. The world was watching, and not all eyes were kind. Lily, still in her pajamas, sat cross-legged on the couch, her hazel eyes scanning the headlines on Anna's old laptop. Miami's salsa girl stuns billionaire, read one. Child prodigy humiliates Edward Langston, declared another. The comments sections were a battlefield. Thousands praised Lily's courage, calling her an inspiration, while others, seeded by Langston's PR machine, whispered poison. Staged one anonymous post read, "The mother's using her kid to scam the rich." Another claimed, "They planned this for attention. No way a kid dances like that without coaching." Anna saw the hurt flicker across Lily's face and closed the laptop gently. "Don't read that garbage, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft but firm. "They don't know you. They don't know us." Lily nodded, but her eyes were distant, her small hands twisting the hem of her shirt. She was 11, but the weight of the world's judgment was already pressing on her. Anna pulled her into a hug, her heart aching. "You were incredible last night. Nothing they say can take that away." Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder, her voice muffled. "I just wanted to help Mom. Why are they so mean?" Anna had no answer, only the fierce protective love that had carried them through years of hardship. But she knew the rumors were no accident. Edward Langston, humiliated on his own stage, was not a man to let defeat go unanswered. Across town, in his penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay, Langston paced like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear. The skyline glittered beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows, but he saw none of it. His empire was under siege. The stock price of Langston Properties had dipped 15%. At the opening bell, sponsors were pulling out of his charity gala, and his social calendar, once a fortress of power, was crumbling. Invitations were rescinded, calls went unanswered. The video of his cruelty, his sneering wager, his attempt to deny Lily's victory had gone viral, painting him as a bully, a caricature of privilege. "Fix this, Victor," he snapped to his assistant, Victor Crane, who stood nearby scrolling through a tablet. "I want those Carters buried. Make it look like they're frauds, leeches, whatever it takes." Victor, a man with the cold efficiency of a machine, nodded. "We've already got accounts pushing the narrative. By tonight, the talk shows will be questioning their motives. We're digging into the mother's past hospital records, employment history. If there's dirt, we'll find it." Langston's lips curled into a grim smile. "Good. I want them to regret ever stepping into my ballroom." Meanwhile, Clara Martinez was not idle. From her office in downtown Miami, she coordinated with her foundation's legal team to protect Anna and Lily. She'd seen Langston's tactics before. His wealth was a weapon, and he wielded it without mercy. Clara had known Rosa Carter, Lily's grandmother, in the 1980s, when they were both young women performing in Miami's vibrant street scene. Rosa's salsa had been a wildfire, drawing crowds in Little Havana with her fearless energy. Clara saw that same spark in Lily, and she wasn't about to let Langston snuff it out. She called Anna, her voice calm but urgent. "You need to stay low for a bit," she said. "The press is circling and Langston's playing dirty. I've got a lawyer and a PR consultant coming to your place this afternoon. They'll help you navigate this." Anna, still overwhelmed, could barely find words. "Why are you doing this, Ms. Martinez? You don't even know us." Clara's voice softened. "I knew Rosa. She'd have done the same for me." And that girl of yours, she's special. We're going to make sure the world sees that." By midday, the Carter Spark Foundation was official its mission to provide relief for medical debt and fund dance programs for underprivileged kids. Clara's team had secured a small, sunny house in Coral Gables for Anna and Lily, a quiet escape from the chaos of Overtown. The move was swift, orchestrated by James Torres, the hotel's head of security, who arrived with a van and a team of volunteers. As they packed their meager belongings, Lily clutched a small wooden box containing Rose's old dance shoes, a pair of worn red heels that still smelled faintly of leather and sweat. "Do you think Grandma's watching, Mom?" she asked, her voice small. Anna knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I know she is, sweetheart. She's dancing with you." The new house was modest but bright, with a backyard where Lily could practice her steps under the shade of a mango tree. It wasn't a mansion, but to them it felt like a palace. The first thing Anna did was pay off their medical debt, every cent of it, wiring the money with a trembling hand. The relief was physical, a weight lifting from her shoulders, but the rumors lingered like a shadow. The media storm intensified. Morning shows debated Lily's performance, some hosts praising her as a prodigy, others echoing Langston's smears, questioning Anna's integrity. "Is this a heartwarming story or a calculated stunt?" one anchor asked, her tone dripping with skepticism. Anonymous posts on social media claimed Anna had a history of exploiting her daughter, citing unnamed sources. Anna felt the sting of each accusation, her fear of losing their newfound hope growing with every headline. Lily, meanwhile, was fielding offers from dance schools across the country. The Miami Dance Academy, a prestigious institution, sent a personal invitation from its director, Elena Vargas, a former prima ballerina who had seen the viral video. "Your daughter has a rare gift," Elena wrote. "We'd be honored to train her." Anna hesitated, worried about the spotlight's toll on Lily, but Lily was adamant. "I want to dance, Mom," she said, her eyes fierce. "Not for them, for me, for Grandma." They visited the academy, a sleek building with mirrored studios and polished floors. Elena watched Lily move her face unreadable, then said simply, "You don't just dance, Lily. You speak. We'll teach you how to make that voice louder." But Langston's campaign was relentless. By the end of the week, a local tabloid published a hit piece titled, "The Salsa Scam is the Carter Family Playing Miami for Fools." It cited insider sources, claiming Anna had coached Lily to manipulate the gala's guests, even suggesting she'd fabricated their financial struggles. The article included a grainy photo of Anna leaving the hospital years ago, her face drawn with grief after Michael's death, captioned as evidence of her troubled past. Anna read it in their new kitchen, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the paper. "They're lying," she whispered, tears falling. "They're twisting everything." Lily, sitting at the table, reached for her mother's hand. "Let them talk, Mom. We know the truth." But the hurt in Anna's eyes was a knife in Lily's heart. She wanted to fight back, to show the world who they really were. That night, she stayed up late, sketching out a new dance in a notebook, her pencil moving as fast as her thoughts. It was a salsa, but not like the one from the gala. This one would tell the story of people like her mother, people who worked in the shadows, who carried burdens no one saw, who were stronger than the world gave them credit for. Clara Martinez had a plan. She called a meeting with a group of Rosa's old friends, former street performers who had made names for themselves in Miami's Latin dance scene. They gathered at a community center in Little Havana, a low-slung building filled with the rhythm of congas and the laughter of children taking free dance classes. Clara stood at the front, her presence commanding. "We're not letting Langston's lies win," she said. "Lily and Anna deserve better. We're going to throw an event, a showcase for Lily, right here in the heart of our community. Let's show Miami what Rosa's legacy really means. The group agreed, their faces alight with the same fire that had once driven them to dance under streetlights. They called it La Chispa de Rosa's Spark, a night of music and dance to celebrate Lily and raise funds for the Carter Spark Foundation. Clara reached out to local businesses, artists, and even a few sympathetic gala guests, securing a venue at the historic Tower Theater. The event would be a chance to set the record straight, to let Lily's dancing speak louder than Langston's lies. Anna was hesitant, her trust shaken by the media's attacks. "What if they twist this too?" she asked Clara, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara took her hand, her grip firm. "They can try, but they won't win. Not when the truth is this powerful. Let Lily dance Anna. Let her show them who you both are." Anna nodded, her resolve hardening. She looked at Lily, who was practicing in the backyard, her movements fluid and fierce, a blend of Rosa's street salsa and her own raw emotion. The showcase was set for 2 weeks away, and Lily threw herself into preparing her new dance. She called it Sombras y Luz, Shadows, and Light, a story of struggle and triumph of people who were invisible but unbreakable. She worked late into the night, her small body moving under the glow of a single bulb, her steps a promise to her mother, to Rosa, to herself. James Torres, who had become a quiet protector, stopped by to check on them, bringing a box of Cuban pastries and a reassuring smile. "You're doing Rosa proud, kid," he said, watching Lily practice. "This city's going to see it." As the showcase approached, the rumors grew uglier. A talk show host invited a source who claimed Anna had been fired from a previous job for theft, a complete fabrication, but it spread like wildfire. Anna stopped going outside, afraid of the cameras, the questions, the judgment. Lily saw the toll it was taking, the way her mother's shoulders slumped, the way her laughter had gone quiet. She channeled that pain into her dance, each step a rebellion against the lies, each spin a declaration of their truth. Clara's team worked tirelessly, countering the smears with press releases and interviews from gala guests who had witnessed Lily's courage. The Miami Herald published a follow-up story, The Truth Behind the Salsa Girl, featuring Clara's video and quotes from the philanthropists who had pledged millions. Slowly, the tide began to turn, but Langston's influence was deep, his resources vast. He wasn't just fighting for his reputation, he was fighting for his identity, and he would not stop until the Carters were broken. For Lily and Anna, the showcase was their chance to fight back, not with words but with the language of dance, the language Rosa had taught them, the language of the heart. The Tower Theater, in Miami's Little Havana, pulsed with life on the night of La Chispa de Rosa, the showcase organized to honor Lily Carter and her grandmother's legacy. The historic venue, with its Art Deco facade and warm golden interior, was packed with a diverse crowd, local families, artists, gala guests, and even a few curious reporters who had slipped past Clara Martinez's careful vetting. The air hummed with anticipation, the scent of Cuban coffee, and anticipation mingling as the house lights dimmed. Outside, the Miami night was alive with the rhythm of salsa bands spilling from nearby clubs. But inside, all eyes were on the stage where Lily, now 11 years old, would perform her new dance, Sombras y Luz, Shadows and Light. The piece was her creation, a salsa-inspired story of the invisible strength of people like her mother, Anna Carter, who toiled in the shadows of the city's wealth. Anna sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly, her face a mix of pride and nervous hope. Beside her was Clara Martinez, her silver hair gleaming under the lights, and James Torres, the hotel security chief, who had become an unlikely guardian. The stage was bare, except for a single spotlight, its beam cutting through the darkness like a promise. But beyond the theater's walls, a storm was brewing. Edward Langston, still seething from his public humiliation at the Grand Meridian, had not given up his vendetta. His latest move was a desperate attempt to sabotage the event, hiring a group of online agitators to spread last-minute rumors of a scam and planting protesters outside to disrupt the evening. Yet, as the curtains rose, the power of Lily's story was about to prove stronger than his schemes. The music began a haunting blend of congas trumpets and a lone guitar composed by a local musician who had known Rosa Carter in her street performing days. The notes carried the soul of Little Havana, raw and vibrant, a perfect canvas for Lily's dance. She stepped into the spotlight, her simple red dress, a nod to Rosa's favorite color, flaring as she moved. Her first steps were slow, deliberate, a portrayal of exhaustion and struggle. She curled into herself, her body low to the ground, mimicking the weight her mother carried through years of endless shifts and crushing debt. The audience leaned forward, their breaths held as Lily's movements told the story of a woman unseen, her hands scrubbing floors, her heart breaking under the gaze of those who never looked twice. Then the music shifted, the tempo rising, and Lily rose with it. Her steps became sharp, defiant, her arms slicing through the air like blades. Each motion a rejection of the world's dismissal. The crowd felt it, the pain, the resilience, the quiet fire of those who refuse to be broken. Anna's eyes filled with tears, recognizing herself in every step, her daughter transforming their struggles into something beautiful, something eternal. Clara gripped Anna's hand, her own eyes shining. "That's Rosa's spark," she whispered. "That's your girl." Outside, Langston's hired protesters gathered their signs accusing the Carters of fraud, their voices amplified by megaphones. "Stop the scam!" They shouted, their words muffled but audible through the theater's walls. A few audience members glanced nervously toward the exits, but the energy in the room held firm, anchored by Lily's performance. James Torres, stationed near the stage, had anticipated trouble. He'd coordinated with local police to keep the protesters at bay, and Clara's team had hired extra security to ensure the event went smoothly. Inside, the crowd was too captivated to care about the noise outside. Lily's dance reached its climax, the music swelling into a triumphant chorus as she spun her red dress a blur of fire, her movements a celebration of survival. She leaped, her small body soaring, then landed in a pose of quiet strength, her head high, her arms open as if embracing the world. The final note hung in the air, and for a moment the theater was silent, the weight of her story settling into every heart. Then the applause erupted, a deafening roar that drowned out the protesters outside, a tidal wave of love and recognition. Roses rained onto the stage, tossed by children who had learned to dance at the community center, by elders who remembered Rosa's performances, by strangers moved to tears. Backstage, Lily caught her breath, her chest heaving, her face alight with a quiet joy. Anna rushed to her, enveloping her in a hug so tight it felt like she could hold the world at bay. "You were incredible, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You told our story." Lily smiled, her hazel eyes bright. "I told Grandma's story too, Mom, and yours." Clara joined them, her stern face softened by pride. "You've done more than dance tonight, Lily," she said. "You've given this city something to believe in." But the victory was bittersweet. As the crowd continued to cheer, James approached, his expression grim. "We've got a problem," he said quietly. "Langston's people are escalating. They've got a news crew out there ready to spin this as a publicity stunt. They're saying Anna orchestrated the whole thing for money. Anna's face paled, the familiar sting of accusation cutting deep. "They won't stop, will they?" she asked, her voice trembling. Clara's jaw tightened. "Let them try. We've got the truth on our side, and it's louder than their lies." She turned to Lily, her voice firm. "You keep dancing, mija. That's how you fight back." The event was a triumph, raising an additional $2 million for the Carter Spark Foundation, with donations pouring in from locals inspired by Lily's performance. The protesters dispersed their message, drowned out by the community's support. Social media buzzed with clips of Sombras y Luz, the hashtag #RosaSpark, trending alongside videos of Lily's dance. The Miami Herald ran a glowing review, calling it a love letter to the unsung heroes of our city. But Langston's campaign persisted. The next morning, a national talk show aired a segment featuring a witness who claimed Anna had planned the gala incident to exploit Lily's talent. The lies were flimsy, but they spread sowing doubt in the minds of those who hadn't been at the theater. Anna felt the weight return, the fear that their new life could be snatched away. She stopped answering the phone, avoiding the reporters who camped outside their Coral Gables home. Lily saw the toll it was taking, the way her mother's smile faltered, the way she checked the locks twice before bed. One evening, as they sat in their new living room, the walls adorned with photos of Rosa dancing, Lily took her mother's hand. "Mom, we can't let him win," she said, her voice fierce. "Grandma said dancing is fighting without fists. I'm going to keep fighting." Inspired by her daughter's resolve, Anna agreed to let Lily perform again, this time at a national dance festival in Miami, a platform that would reach millions. Lily spent weeks refining Sombras y Luz, adding new layers to the story, moments of joy, of community, of the love that had carried them through. Clara connected them with a choreographer, Maria Lopez, a former student of Rosa's, who had gone on to perform on Broadway. Maria worked with Lily to polish her movements, preserving the raw emotion, while adding a professional sheen. "You're not just dancing for yourself," Maria told her. "You're dancing for every kid who's ever felt invisible." The festival was a month away, and Lily poured her heart into it, practicing in the backyard until the stars came out. Her steps, a prayer for her mother's peace. Meanwhile, Clara's team fought back against Langston's smears, releasing statements from gala guests and financial records proving Anna's struggles were real. The community rallied, with local businesses sponsoring the festival and families sharing their own stories of debt and survival. The Carters were no longer alone. They were part of something bigger. The night of the festival arrived, the Miami Beach Convention Center transformed into a vibrant stage for dancers from across the country. Lily was the closing act, her performance live-streamed to millions. Backstage, Anna adjusted the hem of Lily's red dress, her hands steady now, her eyes clear. "You don't have to do this for me," she said softly. Lily shook her head, her smile radiant. "I'm doing it for us, Mom, for everyone like us." The music began, the same soulful blend of congas and guitar, and Lily stepped into the spotlight. Her dance was a masterpiece, each movement a chapter in their story. Anna's silent strength, Rosa's fiery legacy, the community's embrace. The audience, thousands strong, was silent, then erupted their applause, a physical force. Anna watched from the wings, tears streaming down her face, not of pain, but of a profound, unshakable joy. She saw her daughter not as a child, but as a force, a spark that could light up the world. Clara, standing beside her, squeezed her shoulder. "This is what Rosa meant," she said. "This is what it means to fight with love." Langston's final attempt to sabotage the festival failed. His hired agitators were turned away by security, their voices lost in the crowd's cheers. The live stream went viral, with millions sharing clips of Lily's dance, drowning out the last of his lies. Days later, a letter arrived at the Carter Spark Foundation, addressed to Lily in shaky handwriting, postmarked from a private address in the Bahamas. Anna read it first, her breath catching as she recognized the signature, Edward Langston. "Dear Miss Carter," it began, "I watched your performance at the festival. It was extraordinary. I have spent my life believing power comes from wealth, from control. You showed me I was wrong. Your dance was not just skill, it was truth, a truth I spent years running from. I lost everything after that night at the Grand Meridian, my reputation, my fiancé, my influence. I deserved it. I write not to ask for forgiveness, but to acknowledge what you've taught me, that strength is not in dominating others, but in lifting them up. Thank you." Anna handed the letter to Lily, her expression thoughtful. Lily read it silently, then folded it and set it aside. "He's learning, Mom," she said softly. "Like Grandma said, everyone can learn, even the worst ones." Anna nodded, a quiet peace settling over her. "Maybe he's finding his own light," she said, her voice steady. "But we've got ours." The next week, Lily was at a new dance studio funded by the Carter Spark Foundation, a bright space in Little Havana, where children from every corner of Miami came to learn. She wasn't there as a star, but as a teacher moving among a group of wide-eyed kids, adjusting their postures, encouraging their tentative steps. "It's not about being perfect," she told a shy girl in the back, her voice gentle. "It's about telling your story. What's yours?" The girl smiled, her shoulders relaxing, and took her first step. Anna watched from the doorway, her heart full. She was no longer a housekeeper, but the director of the foundation, her days spent helping families like theirs escape the prison of debt. The studio was one of many, each a seed planted in Rosa's name, each a promise that no child's gift would be silenced by poverty. Lily's dance had done more than win a wager. It had built a legacy, one that would grow with every child who found their voice, every family lifted from despair. As the kids danced, their laughter filling the room, Anna thought of Rosa, of Michael, of the battles they'd fought. She looked at Lily, her little spark now a beacon for others, and knew this was the true victory, not fame, not vengeance, but the quiet, unbreakable power of love passed down step by step through the dance.